Hey, thanks for joining us today, everyone. I'm Krista Malzone, Community Manager for the CA Security Community, and we have Chris Thomas here with us today. We're testing out using webcams for the first time today for our webcast, so bear with us as we attempt to multitask. Chris, if you want to go ahead and start the presentation in PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is being recorded, and Chris is going to dive into the Identity Manager reporting today. We're not going to be able to cover everything, so look for a few more upcoming webcasts, and it's okay. You can just turn your hand. You'll hear from us. You'll hear from us soon in the community as we schedule more of these. So if you have any questions, Chris wants this to be as interactive as possible. Just feel free to type them in the chat window or the Q&A window, or you can even ping us to ask a question on the phone line, and we'll pause for questions at the end of each section. So, Chris, thank you for doing this today, and feel free to get started.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Kristen. And, I definitely look forward to presenting this to everybody. I have my CA pin that I found up here. It's the old version of the community. You all know I've been an active member. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay and they can see me okay. I know my hair might be getting chopped off here. It's a little gray. I apologize. But if anybody's having any trouble at all, or if you're okay, please shoot an IM over to Kristen so she can channel that through to me. And as she mentioned, I would like to keep this interactive, this presentation. So if you do see anything in this presentation that catches your attention or you'd like further clarification on, which you feel would benefit the group on any particular subject that I'm covering, I would love to hear from you. Also at the end, there'll be a point for Q&A where you can ask any kind of question you may have on reporting, or you think I may be able to answer on Identity Manager or what have you. I'll be happy to cover that as well. This is my first series. I did have on here Series 1 in the original title. So if I don't get to cover everything that you were hoping to see on this particular webcast, I had planned on doing another one that would build from this. So without any further ado, let's move forward. This is me building Habitat for Humanity. Just a little background, try to get people to lighten up, laugh a little bit. We contribute some time. And there's hyperlinks throughout this presentation. I'm not going to click this particular one, but there's a whole bunch of pictures from Habitat for Humanity you can click on there. CA is pretty active in the CA Together in action. I like that about this company. So let's move forward here. So this is the agenda, and I apologize if my voice is a little scratchy. I was skiing over the weekend with my son, but I'll try to keep my voice as clean as I can. Moving forward here, topic 1, basically what I tried to identify here is some situations. I have a question that came through, but here I'm going to save the questions. I do appreciate the questions that you have coming through, and I'll try to answer questions at the end of each topic if they pertain to the topic, and then I'll also answer any questions that you may submit at any time at the live Q&A at the bottom, okay? So please do keep the questions coming in. I see them, and thank you very much. Topic 1 is the post-install configurations. This causes a plethora of problems with anyone that's picked up reporting, is trying it for the first time. Even people that have used it many times will run into this after they install multiple report servers or multiple integrations. So to not cover this within this webcast, I thought would be misleading. So topic 2 is going to cover audit reports. I decided to do auditing first. I could have done snapshot reports first, but I said time permitting, I could probably cover all of the audit topics substantially within this period of time. Obviously, there may be some more things that I need to cover. The snapshot reports, there's a lot of business use cases that get thrown in the mix with that. And I'll try to cover as much as I can within this webcast, but if that has to get extended into another one, and then we can pick that up from where we left off. So without further ado, let's move forward here. So post-install configuration, common problems. So I'm going to try to cover both Windows and Linux installations on this one. It's more common to have the Windows, but I just got off the phone today with a Linux installation. And I run my report server on Linux, so I would encourage you, if you use reporting, to do it on there. It seems to run a little better. It's more lightweight, I think. So during the implementation, many times both audit and snapshot reports fail with connection errors. Now, this is a very common issue that kind of, I would say, infects the installation. It's a bad term, but basically what it is there's a whole bunch of post-install steps that are manual that need to be completed by you after the report server. You install Identity Manager. Now you have to complete all of these manual manipulations. There's files that you need to copy, XMLs that you need to update. You then need to restart services, registries that need to be manipulated. I've compiled all of these things that can start to cause issues over time, and I've created a script, a VB script for Windows. A shell script is coming for Linux that basically does all this for you. And it's been belabored at length. If you've worked with me before, you've seen it. Now, there's hyperlinks in this presentation that you can click on at any time. I'll have Kristen send this out to you so that you can click on it yourself. But this particular one here, if I click it, can't view reports, will take you to a communities post that I put together on this particular topic. And now some of the formatting is a little off because, as I mentioned, I was pretty active in my CA, right? So all this stuff got migrated. Without going into all that, all the content is still here. So if you look at the top here, this is actually a video. It looks a little mangled, but if you click on it, that's a video that will take you to me explaining this whole problem and all of the manipulations that are required. And if you scroll down a bit more, you'll see this is a script I wrote that automates this whole process. So what I normally suggest to customers or colleagues or partners is if you haven't done any of these manipulations yet, and you're on Windows, I suggest you just download this simplifyit.zip, run it as an administrator on the report server, and this problem is no longer an issue. So if there's any questions on that, I can come back to it. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Importing the crystal reports tends to be an issue. I don't know why it becomes such a problem, but in the bookshelf is references to running a like a batch file to do the import. My suggestion is if you're on Windows, just use this. There's a video tech doc I'm linking to here that my colleague actually put together, and she takes you through doing it through the import wizard. It's a GUI, and you click it. It's very simple. There's a lot of next screens, next, but it actually works very well in use. The use case of it, I rarely see it cause many more issues. When I'm trying to support somebody with the batch file, I encounter another issue. I'm constantly having to fix this thing. When I just want to get it done, I go to the wizard and it's done. Now, if you're on Linux, if you happen to have a wizard on a Windows machine, well, yeah, you can do it with that, or you're going to have to do the import shell script that's on the actual Linux machine. I was just helping a customer with that. But if you need more information on that, again, you just click this link. It'll take you to a communities post that I have on it. Now, all of these pretty much have links to them. That'll take you to a communities post. This one coming up here. So this video, if you just click on it, it's another video like the other presentation. I'm not going to play it now because I don't want to bore anyone with a video at this point in time. I want to try to keep this presentation as exciting as it possibly can be for you. So I'll just let you know that the answer is in here, and if you have any questions on it or you've worked with it before, please ask them, and I'll be happy to address it.
Chris, we have one question in
Yes.
Q&A about, from Azita LaCure, where is the import wizard in IM user interface?
Yeah, it's not in the IM user interface, actually. It's now it's important to differentiate the products, right? So CA makes Identity Manager, and the report server is manufactured by SAP. CA resells the SAP report server within the product, so you actually get two products when you purchase Identity Manager. You get the CA Identity Management Suite, and you also get the Business Intelligence, or BOXY, and that's going to be 3.1 SP6 if you're going to use the latest version that we support, okay? And that's yours to use. You're only supposed to use it with Identity Manager. You're not supposed to use it for any of your enterprise reporting. Now, the import wizard is specific to BOXY itself. So when you run it, it's going to be off the start, programs, business intelligence. You know, you'll see all the Java info view. You'll see the central management console, the central configuration manager. Within that list, you'll also see the import wizard. So I hope that addressed your question.
What was that list called again?
The list? I mean, I could show it.
I'm just going to type it into as an answer in the Q&A window, so we have it in there.
It's the import wizard is off the programs menu for business objects.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And the video covers that pretty clearly. The install guidance for Linux and Unix. Basically, when I started on reporting, and I don't know if you guys can still see me anymore, but I think so because my light's on, but I can't see myself. That's probably good because I don't want to look at myself. I'd rather look at you, Chris. So, no, I don't want to get lost in Chris's eyes there. But anyway, all right, so Identity Minder reporting on Linux, right? Now, that's the missing manual. So when I started with this product, the actual guide for installing this on Linux and Unix, I'll be honest, it just didn't work, okay? The product never could install on it. There was a lot of issues that I probably pulled. You know, I'm kind of losing a little hair here, but I may have lost a few more pieces of hair on this particular subject. But bottom line is, and I'm sorry if I'm saying and that much, I'm going to try to remove that from my presentation, okay? But these two guides, if you click on them, they're a little bit older because I went through this a lot in the previous versions, but I do still use them today. Like I said, I run my report server on Linux. It helps me a lot with those issues. So I would encourage you, if you're running on Linux or Unix, to review these publications and not just trust the bookshelf, okay? And yes, I've heard feedback that a lot of this information that I have should be in the bookshelf. I've worked with a number of people on that. I'm just going to continue to promote the use of the communities until that is included, all right? But for now, this is a good addendum to the bookshelf. And you can see it goes through a whole bunch of steps and procedures. Everything with Linux is command line when you do the install, and same thing on Solaris. So I'm not going to click those two. If you have any specific questions, please ask. Post-install configurations continued, right? So now, I was just speaking about this today with my support director. He's probably on the line now. But basically, the identity management integration is integrating into a legacy version of the report server. So 3.1 SP6 is really not the latest version from SAP. The latest version is 4.0.4.1, right? That's the business intelligence, the latest version. So it's almost like, you know, 12.5 and 12.6 of Identity Manager. We're using the older version of the report server. And because of that, we're seeing some security vulnerabilities and things that need to be mitigated on these older versions, which is understandable. And there's ways to fix that. And so this does become a post-install configuration or something, ramification that you want to look at yourself in order to mitigate those security issues.
We got a question from Jeff Limpert. When importing Crystal reports with the media on a share, he's had trouble with the BIAR file portion of the install. Will running the install locally resolve the issue, or would that be a better practice?
Yeah, I'd like to stay on the security, but I think with that particular one, I would always suggest, whenever I do the imports, I always copy all the files from wherever they may be. Okay, now if you follow the bookshelf, they'll tell you they're here, they're there, they're everywhere. Okay, but the reality of it is, follow the publications I gave you. I'm telling you exactly where those files exist. And if you follow the publications I wrote, I believe I'll be telling you to copy all that media locally onto the report server and then run that locally. And that should solve a lot of those issues for you. If you have any issues with it at any time, you can always ask a question like you did, raise an issue with me, shoot me an email, whatever. I'll be happy to help you with it, no problem. But yes, that should resolve it.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, no problem. So the upgrade, so this one here with the upgrade, the report server and Tomcat. So when you go onto the downloads link, if I opened up the Identity Manager product downloads page, you'd see a number of report server versions. So you'd have CABI 3.3 would be one listed to download. That would be for either Windows, Linux, or Solaris. And then you'd see SP1 listed for all those. Now it's confusing. What does CABI 3.3 SP1 mean, right? It confuses virtually everyone, and it confused myself for a long time. I heard that they're now moving away from this version naming discrepancy in the CABI 4 version, which is fantastic, okay? But in 3.3, it's going to be a little bit challenging to understand. CABI is the embedding technology that CA uses to work with business intelligence, and just because we're calling it 3.3 SP1, that's actually BOXY 3.1 SP6. Now, I've written numerous publications about that, but if you can just accept that at face value, what you're installing here is BOXY 3.1 SP6, and when you apply that SP6 patch to SP5, it will upgrade your Tomcat to Tomcat 7, and Tomcat 7 has far less security vulnerabilities than 6. Now, if you still need to upgrade your Tomcat again to be Tomcat 8, for instance, that's what this link here will take you through. So both of those are covered in these slides. I'll click this one, for instance, real quick. I just wrote this one prior to the presentation because I figured it was important for people to have. And it's just a PDF, right? And you click it, and it takes you through the process of how to do this. I think it'll open here. Yeah, so, it's a manual process, a manual post-install configuration, if you need to do that. Let me move on. One required, I don't know how we are on time. Let me go back here.
12:18, you got plenty of time.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now this gets a little bit technical, this next one, and I'm sure there's plenty of technical people on the phone that would love to talk about this. I just want to try to make sure I'm moving at the pace with everyone. And this one here is, when required, setting up IDM reporting in a firewall environment, the report server, application server, and client workstation all communicate over the network via an enterprise firewall. So this particular one is where, now if there's a security reason why you would need to set up the report server in one VLAN and set up the identity manager server in another VLAN, and then set up the client workstations in a separate VLAN, and every time we're communicating, we have to go through access control lists on a firewall, that's where this post would come in handy. So you click this, and I wrote up a big post. This was a big issue as well, to try to identify all the ports that are required for us to work through a firewalled environment, and I've meticulously covered all that within this publication. And you have to actually make some custom changes within the CMC to allow the CMS to bind to specific ports, allow the input FRS to bind to a specific port, and the output FRS to bind to a specific port. What are those things you're asking? There's servers within the CCM or the CMC, where you go to the servers list. CCM has a snap-in for it too. But all those different servers are used when Identity Manager says, let me request a report, let me view a report. So those are the things that need to be set up to work through the firewall. Again, that's all covered within that. Now, I think this is the end of the post-install configurations. So I don't know if were there any questions that I had skipped in that.
Not right now. If anyone has any questions, just add them into the Q&A window, and when Chris gets a chance to pause in between sections, we'll address those questions. Thanks.
Okay, and then this one I didn't click on. I'll just click on it real quick before I move forward. Some people, I know in the field and services, everybody loves to take screenshots of the process. If you click this one, it'll actually, this document has all the screenshots that I took when I was applying 3.3 SP1. I know people want to see, so this is pretty self-explanatory. How do you upgrade it? It's the process I followed and it worked. Okay, so let's move forward here. Audit reports. IDM auditing, so there's a little bit of a confusion. I wish I had like a whiteboard here or something I could like point out to you what the confusion is and draw and stuff like that, but I'm just kind of limited with my hands and my face, and hopefully I shaved today. I think I'm good, but basically, maybe this has a diagram though. I click this. I think this has a diagram. I guess I could use like Visio on the screen or something if I had Visio. But all right, so this is a diagram I kind of extended at some point. So what did I say here in the presentation? I said auditing is mutually exclusive from business objects auditing DB. Now, it's not critically important that you understand that, but it makes sense as you start to understand the solution. The report server here, IAM report server, is its own installation. Identity Manager is its own installation. Both products have auditing. My suggestion to 99.9, I just say 100% of the customers, is to disable the audit database because it provides you, in my opinion, virtually no benefit. Why does it provide you no benefit? Because every time, I think you could see my pointer, but every time you request a report from Identity Manager, it goes to the IAM report server, and it will use the administrator credentials. That's when you log into the CMC, you type in administrator and your password. So it doesn't matter what identity you're using in Identity Manager to request reports, it's always going to use administrator. And in my research, auditing everything that the administrator does can actually accumulate over time and cause your report server to crash. So my suggestion is flat out just disable it because you have auditing within Identity Manager which will tell you who's requesting what reports, and if that's the way you're doing it, then that should be the audit trail the only audit trail that you require. The CMS DB here could also be the audit DB in this diagram. The object store DB here could also be the audit and snapshot DB, but my suggestion is to separate them. Now, the reason why there's lines connecting the two here is because when you request a report from the report server, you provide it the database information. If it's an audit report, you provide it the audit JDBC connection. If it's a snapshot, you provide it the snapshot JDBC connection when you're requesting the report. So it sends over this request, and then it goes out and it says, okay, give me this data from here, returns it back to here, and then Identity Manager shows that report is complete. When you go to view it, it simply goes here and produces a frame within Identity Manager that we're all familiar with to view the report. I hope that helps a little.
We got a question from Ashish. Can we use same/single report server for multiple IDM environments?
Absolutely. My suggestion would be to definitely use that. The only caveat there is you want to ensure that everybody's at the same version, right? So I have a little bit of a challenge because I run my Linux report server and then I have a Windows deployment too, and sometimes I want to use a Windows bar file on my Linux Oracle deployment, and you can trick it, right? You can get crafty with the folders and stuff, but the official supported suggestion is all identity, like let's say you have QA, dev, prod, test, if they're all at the same exact version, even minus one service pack, the official is at the same version. Yes, everybody can use the same report server. You should be ready to vertically scale it if you see scalability issues. Right now, we're supporting vertical scalability. Horizontal scalability of the report server, like a cluster deployment, we need to enhance. I think CloudMinder is supporting that, and it shouldn't be too hard to get Identity Manager on-premise to support that as well. So that would be a good enhancement request. But yes, I would centralize that.
Which can now be posted to the CA security community. If you have an enhancement request for Identity Manager, you would post it as an idea to the CA security community and categorize it under Identity Suite.
I've got a lot more of those, Kristen, so you can work with me on that, and we'll chock that one full of nuts.
All right, we got two more questions.
Okay.
From Andre, where are you providing what JDBC connection string for what report server to use?
Yeah, that's when you're actually requesting the report. So I don't know if I can get out of, can I get out of this full screen? I'll break free from the full screen for a minute. I think I have, I wasn't going to do a demo this early, but if there are any questions, let me see. I think, okay. This is my environment, right? I think it comes up, and I can show you where that is. But basically, when you request the report, if you do a modify admin task on the actual report task, then you go into the search screen. Within that, you'll see the parameter at the bottom of that search. You have to browse and then edit on that particular task. And at the bottom, you'll see the parameter RPT param con usually indicates the, yeah, let me break away from this for a second. I'm not going to troubleshoot my system on the call. All right, so bottom line is that at the bottom of the search screen, you browse and edit it, and at the very bottom is a listing there of the actual connection. Now, if you wanted to modify those connections, you go to Modify JDBC Gendy Connections within the product, is under the System tab, I believe. That's where you set up the auditing connection. The Snapshot connection is within the Snapshot tasks. Now, I don't know why it's separated, and I've come up with customers before, well, we can modify other JDBC connections, and then there's another one for the Snapshot. My suggestion is do the Snapshot one within the Snapshot task, do the audit one within the general JDBC connections, then go into your report task. So let's say you're doing a roles report. Do a modify admin task on the roles report, go to the search screen, not by way you associate the snapshots on the tabs tab, but in the search screen, browse, edit. At the bottom of that is where you need to select your database. I believe that answered your question. I hope you followed me the way I'm explaining. It's probably easier to show you, but we can come back to that if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I'll have you follow up with a more detailed response for that since I couldn't really capture it in the Q&A. Marco is asking, how is the IDM auditing different from the auditing done in Governance Minder?
What was the?
How is IDM auditing different from auditing done in Governance Minder?
I'm going to have to table that because I'm not a Governance Minder expert at this point. I'm trying to ramp up on Governance Minder and get acclimated with reporting. I believe both products have enterprise-level auditing for the entire product, so I would imagine they're similar, but that should be mutually exclusive from anything reporting related. Although, if you're trying to relate that to why I said disable audit within the report server, I think the same advice would carry through even in a Governance Minder deployment, because my impression is that both products are leveraging the administrator account to connect to the report server. So I believe in both situations, the audit database in reporting buys you virtually nothing except potential problems.
All right. Another question from Suresh. Can we view IM reports in CABI server by providing IMDB details? I mean, in CABI URL.
Yeah, you can always view the reports within the CMC. You just click on the folders, and then within the folders, you click on the IM reports, find the report that you want, the green icon, right-click it, and then go to history, and that'll show you all the reports in there that you can view. I don't know if there's another thing that you're trying to build there. I have to talk to you more about exactly what you're trying to do, but you can always view the reports in both places. The CMC, you can view them in info view, you can view them in the product. You can even look at the open document. We use like an SDK to bring up the report within Identity Manager, and if you pull out that string that it's requesting, if you do like a web, they have some of those web plugins for like Firefox and stuff where you can sniff what they're actually requesting. There's an open document URL that you can copy out of that as well to view the reports in whatever you want, as long as you have the token. If you don't provide the token, then you have to authenticate. But again, I can talk to you more about that. The setup, so let me try to move on here unless you have some more questions.
I do have one more.
Yeah, okay. We get stuck on
You're a very popular guy.
Well, no, I mean, hey, popularity goes both ways, right?
So I'm doing my best to kind of type out what Chris is saying in the Q&A. But what we'll probably do is we'll
open the mic at some point, maybe?
Yeah, we can open the mic at some point, but what we'll probably do is we'll go through the Q&A after this call, and we'll post a transcript of the Q&A with more details from Chris's answers in the community after this call.
I'll be happy to do that. I'd also like at some point to just open the mic and talk to these people. And I don't know if anybody has dogs barking in the background or we're crackling, popping popcorn or something, but, if you can try to keep your lines muted at some level.
Well, we have there's a capability for them to click raise hand, and it'll enable their audio when I
would suggest if you have any more questions that you think would benefit the group, maybe raise your hand. That way I can answer your question. Because, it's hard for me to get feedback from you and really hear the tone of your voice and know if I'm answering your question or not. So feel free to raise your hand, and let's push the envelope on this webcast. All right? Good.
All right. So one more question is, how about using a single report server installation across multiple products, like one report server instance for SiteMinder, IDM, ControlMinder?
I advocate for this quite a bit, but at the same time, there has been definite shortcomings. And so when I first started working with reporting, and Sagi would remember this because he's been working with me for a while, and he had asked me this question a while back. And there was no interoperability certification matrix that combined the security suite of products like SiteMinder and Identity Manager so that both could certify against the same exact version of the report server at any one time. And I believe that's been addressed up through Josh Freed. So I have seen moving forward that whenever a new version of Identity Manager comes out or a new version of SiteMinder comes out, there is some checking to see if we have backwards compatibility and forwards compatibility, so that if you're using the latest version of both products, you'll be able to leverage the same version of the report server. But my answer to that is, so use the same report server, but if you notice that there is a difference, like maybe SiteMinder can use version 4 of reporting, or Identity Manager can use it first, and the other one can't, and you're not backwards compatible, be prepared to install a new report server. That's my only caveat.
Good. And
I have a publication on that on the communities forum too. I don't have it in these slides, but I could certainly drum that up for you. So setting up orders, if I move on here, if you have any more questions, maybe we can open up the mic at some point here. I don't want to chew up too much time with all this stuff. But so setup auditing sounds simple, but this is a manual setup and causes quite a few issues. Now, I'm sure a lot of the team that I work with here in Islandia and even across America and globally have encountered this, whether you're into reporting or not, and people just simply can't get auditing working, right? So I know a number of colleagues that have dealt with it, and so I wrote a publication on it, right, because a lot of the times I'll get an issue from somebody, they're like, oh, I want to run an audit report. No, it's blank, and, well, you go and you look at the database, and there's no data there. So you're not going to be able to get a report until you make the auditing. So this particular publication has come in handy for me quite a bit on those kinds of issues. And it depends on your application server that you use. If you're using WebSphere, WebLogic, you have to set up your JNDI, GenD connections within the administrative console. If you're on JBoss, you're going to have to do that within the -ds XML files. That's all covered within this. The problem, or the point, excuse me, that gets most people is the string that you put. So when you go into the Identity Manager Management Console, you export this XML, and that XML has within it a location that you need to put for your connection to the audit database. That string is very fickle. It needs to be exactly right, and this is an example of what it would look like, but it might not be exactly the same on your environment. All I can try to say is you have to look at your files, you have to look at your application server, you have to see how the string is formulated on your version. And like, for instance, if it was JBoss, the -ds XML file would have that string in the audit -ds XML file. So you copy it exactly like it is, and you put a Java : in front of it, and that's it. And then once you import it back into the management console, restart your application server, right? And then when it comes up, you can look on step whatever it is, but it's when it starts the step 1, 2, 3. It's in before 26, and you'll see it'll say establishing the audit connection. And if it says successful, you're good. Then all you have to do is go and do a modify admin task on whatever task it is that you want to audit, say modify user, make sure the auditing checkbox is selected, and now you should be ready to make an audit report. I believe I'm going to sneeze in a second, so I apologize if I do.
Well, we have a question.
Yeah.
So Mara wants to know, the architecture we have installed complies with good practice, but to get a snapshot takes more than 24 hours to do it.
Yes.
How can you minimize this time?
Yeah. Would you want me to move on? Is that a sign to move on from auditing onto snapshots?
No, he asked it a few minutes ago, so it's, we're just jumping around.
I mean, I can jump on to snapshots if you want. I was trying to cover auditing for this one, and then maybe jump back to snapshots on another webcast. But since you asked the question, maybe I should just jump to it, okay? So I'm going to jump ahead because you know what? I can break the rules.
It's a new show.
All right, so what do we have here? IDM reporting architecture. So we already described the architecture, right? Then, so this question that you asked is a great question, actually, and I appreciate you asking that. Now, anybody that isn't at the level of the question that was just asked and you haven't made a snapshot yet, you could follow this first bullet here, and this takes you through step-by-step how to make a snapshot report. Now, you'd be surprised. It could be missed a lot, so I would cover those steps to actually produce your first. I would suggest doing like the roles snapshot. That's like the simplest one to do, and you're not going to have this 24-hour snapshot unless you have like 1 million roles, which I doubt you have. I haven't seen a deployment with 1 million roles yet. And if you had 1 million roles, you probably need Governance Minder because that's way too many. And then, so once you move on here, the question that was just asked is, I captured a snapshot. It takes 24 hours for this snapshot to complete. Now, this snapshot, this question has come up many times. This is not the first time I've heard this. And it tends to get me onto a soapbox. And I apologize in advance for that. But basically, here's so deprecation of the snapshot architecture. Oh, and then you have critical snapshot. So this last bullet on this slide, critical reporting fix for large-scale audit or large-scale databases. Now, we moved on. We jumped along, so I don't want to lose everyone, okay? So what I jumped along here is we were on audit reports, and we were starting to talk about that, and now we jump to snapshot reports. There's two fundamentally different type of reports that are out of the box within an Identity Manager solution. You have the snapshot reports, which is a vast majority of them, and then you have the audit reports, which is about 5 or 6 reports. This 24-hour capture is symptomatic of simply capturing too much information. If you're coming from a reporting background, I can understand why you might want all that information. But I think what's important to understand is here. Now, this is something I recently just brought up. Now, this is a big issue. I've raised this up, and I'm sure Dan remembers this thread. He's on there, even Ken Barastro. But basically, this is the problem you're asking me right now. This is the question you're asking me. Now, here's a description of the problem. Plagued with out-of-memory exceptions. Collect information that isn't even required for any out-of-the-box reports. Waste time all the way down to the endpoint layer extracting information that isn't needed. Okay, now I could go on, but I'm sure whoever just asked me that question is saying yes, yes, yes. Okay, and now why does this all happen? Well, it's important to understand the design of the product. All of this information that you want, let's say you want and I feel like I want to stand up. Is that okay? Can I stand up? I don't know, you're going to be looking, I hope you're not looking up my nostrils or something.
Put it down a little bit.
All right, put it down. Yeah, there we go. I'll hold this. How about I just hold it? There we go. All right, so basically, if you are, I hope you can still see me, but basically if you, yeah, sorry, I'm going to repeat myself. But, hey, boss, what's up? All right, so he knew I was standing up, so he popped in the room. Right? All right, so. Yeah, so the design of the product is you're capturing all of this information from LDAP, right? So if you're doing an endpoint accounts report has all this information located on the endpoint, you know, Active Directory, Unix, Oracle, wherever it may live. That's where your data is. So endpoint accounts report, if you need specific sets of data, not like first name, last name, whatever, because a lot of that stuff is actually in the provisioning server, and I've had a lot of debates with sustaining about why are we going to the endpoint to capture that information if it already exists in the provisioning manager. That's a waste of time. A lot of that's been addressed, and now there is warnings when you capture the snapshot. This will require an endpoint to fetch the data. But let's just assume you're going to your endpoint for all this data, okay? The reason why we're doing that is because the reports themselves, if you click this at the bottom, you'll see here that I have an idea with SAP. You click this one. Now, this has been promoted by a lot of developers, both within CA and wherever else, that are using Crystal Reports to try to produce LDAP reports. And Crystal Reports itself has a plugin to enable you to capture data within the actual report from a LDAP repository, but they currently only support AD through like Olay or something like this. My idea was for SAP to standardize the offering so that you could basically run a report against any LDAP repository. It could be CA directory, it could be OID, whatever, and then we could write reports that just say, okay, I want this information, boom, we go right to wherever the data lives and we request it, and there's no more snapshot process. Now, obviously, that hasn't come through to fruition yet. So, excuse me, I'm getting parched. So we're stuck with the snapshot design. Sorry, I'm still answering this first question.
It's fine. We got a question about auditing. Do you want me to hold it until the end, or you want to?
Yeah, no, let me finish this for a second.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry it's such a long answer, but I did want to try to get this across at some point in the presentation. So the issue that you have here now is that you're running the snapshot capture, and you want to make sure it's only not a 24-hour capture. What you need to do is basically set up your filters. So most people that have a reporting background are saying, let me put that filter in the report. I only want to see user A and title B and office C, and that's it. I'm done. I put it in my report. I don't need to worry about this capture. Well, guess what? Yes, you do need to worry about the capture, because the capture is the only thing that's allowing you to make your report what I call end user consumable. So if you're running a snapshot that's going 24 hours, there's a good chance that when you associate that snapshot with any of your out-of-the-box reports, you're going to be producing a report that's 4,000 plus pages long. Now put yourself in the shoes of the person receiving that report where you click the last page and it takes 10 minutes for the UI to even come back to you and say, here's the last page of the report. That's not actually, in my opinion, that's not what an end user wants to see. And I think that even SAP would echo that, right? So what you're left with is the design of the snapshot to govern the report that's provided. That's your filter. So when you go into the snapshot GUI, this is no longer an XML, right? So we used to have all of these XMLs that would cover the snapshot process. Now we have to use a GUI, right? So the GUI is you basically go in and you can create different policies. I want user with user A, whatever. But essentially that's the answer to your question, is that you need to make sure you have snapshot filtering. What's up, Palaka? I got everybody here now. Hello, I used your this is Palaka. Say hello to Palaka. How are you? Nice to meet you. That's the video I actually pushed you guys to. Palaka put that together, yeah. So
just here for 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's basically the snapshot design, and I hope that answered your question. It's a little bit of a technical answer, and I'm trying to wrap it up in a simple way to explain it to you. But if you could take anything out of that soapbox, I would say is if you wanted, here's what I do with most customers. When they say they can't make a report, I say, let's go make the snapshot. Let's do a roles report. I filter it to the system manager. The snapshot completes in, I'm not even kidding, 2 seconds, okay, because it's getting one role. I produce a report that has one line. Now, what does that do for you? Well, it's a POC. It's a proof of concept that reporting can work. But it does demonstrate to you how the snapshots can actually really change the way that the products work, right? Because you won't have these out-of-memory exceptions. You won't have all of these issues that tend to crop up when you have long-running snapshots. I mean, in CloudMinder, they don't even allow the customers to run snapshots. Why? Because it eats up all of your Java heap space, and it could potentially bring down your entire product. So my suggestion is if you're responsible for identity manager reporting, you really want to submerge yourself in this type of knowledge, because you don't want to be the reason why Identity Manager crashed yesterday. So let's move on to the next topic.
So just a time check, we have about 12 minutes left.
12 minutes? I think we should really, I mean, I didn't cover all these slides, and I wasn't really expecting to.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe I really would like to talk to the people that are on the phone.
Yeah.
I can't get any feedback from them.
I think it's a good idea, and I think, you know, this is our first webcast on this topic. We want to, you know, keep this as a webcast, but also a Q&A with the audience so that they can ask the questions that they have on their minds that they want to know more about. So I think we've, you know, done a good mixture of both today. So I have 2 more questions queued up in the Q&A right now.
Okay.
If anyone wants to talk on the phone to Chris, I can't enable your audio unless you raise your hand. So if you go to under the participant feed in WebEx, there's a little icon. It looks like a hand. If you click on that, it's a raise hand button. It'll add you to a queue where we can enable your audio if you want to ask a question. So I don't see any in there right now. So I'll just go to the next question we have in Q&A, and we'll continue talking about this more in our next webcast. But so I have a question about auditing from Kevin Connell. He's very interested in auditing. However, specifically from a compliance point of view, how or who should I contact to see if I can have specific reports set up, or there are some already out of the box or already customized?
That's great question, and I actually planned on presenting that. So if you look here, great question, okay? This is a question, just an example. Now, I spoke to this customer when they asked me this question maybe 2 weeks ago. I said, you know, the kind of questions you're asking me I think are great for a webcast type of a question, because a lot of the times I feel like whoever is the system manager for reporting or for identity manager, you're working with people that don't really understand what's the capabilities, and they just tell you, we want this, 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 and this, and you have to be able to translate business use cases into what the product can provide, and this is a great example of that, right? So the customer came at me, and they say, I have requirements 1 through 5. I need to produce these reports. Here are the reports that are available to me. How do I do this? Right? I planned on putting this in the slide, but I kind of threw it in later. I told Kristen about that. Deviating a little here. ICA. All right. So the report 1 essentially is a snapshot report. To report on an individual with all their access. Right. So summarized onto one page at a given point in time. All right. So when I see that, I start to think 2 things. One is, well, maybe 3 things. One is I know we can answer the question. 2, I start to think about scalability, right? And then I start to think about how we're going to filter that. Who really needs these reports? So sometimes you get a requirement, and it's like, okay, that's a requirement, but how many people are actually going to be receiving these reports? Like sometimes somebody will come to you with a question. You actually have to ask a few questions back. I know people can't stand that, but you do have to do that at times. And then, so this particular one, you want to produce. So let's say let's just simplify it and say we want to produce something for Manager X for all their direct reports. Now, what you would do is basically find a field. I think there's a field in Identity Manager that has Manager listed, right? So you can now set up a snapshot filter that would pull back all users that have that Manager attribute filtered properly. And now that will allow you to produce a report, like a user profiles report, for instance. You can make sure you have all the attributes you need. There's the different screens, right? I don't know if I can show you all those screens. I might as well take you into that real quick. There's my, there it is. So on this one here, if I went to reports, I think everybody can see my thing, right? Reporting tasks, snapshot tasks, manage snapshot definitions. Let's modify a definition. Now here's, thankfully we jumped into this area. When you first get the product, you'll notice, now I may have deleted all mine, but you'll notice that there's a bunch of XML snapshots. See how mine all say XML not supported? That's what you want it to say. Because I think when you first get the product, you're going to have a bunch of XMLs that are first there, right? Now, the reason why you ask that question is because there actually is, in my opinion, a lapse in the documentation on this particular subject. So if you're left wondering, I want to make a user profile report, but I don't know what snapshot policies actually belong in a user profile report. Well, there really is no clear-cut definition of this is what you need for this report, unless you look at the snapshot XML that was provided in the legacy version of the product. Now, that lives within the EAR file. I can show you where that is. But you can look within the XML and see the policies, because I had Sustaining in a previous version make specific XMLs for each report to try to show customers how you can limit your snapshots just so that you're getting the data for each one of those reports. Right? But now with the new version of the product and the GUI, there is no out-of-the-box configurations for each one of those reports, which would be another enhancement that I would like to submit. Just on a usability, it's not that the product is, you can't do something, but it does help with usability. So here's my snapshot policy definition. So if you were trying to answer that first business case, which I think comes back to the question that was asked, here I'm doing a provisioning role, so it's a provisioning report, right? But you come in here and these are your policy definitions. All of this used to be handled in the XMLs for the snapshots, and that's kind of why I was staying away from snapshots a little bit, because it is a big topic, right? But in here, you can select like user, for instance. So if I wanted to get all the users that had a specific manager, I believe you can just do a pull down in here, and you can do a where user filter, right? and then user attributes comparator, right? And then there's, I think, in here, manager. Should be, yep, manager. Now you can put whatever that manager is. And when you capture that snapshot, I may remove provisioning role, I may not. It all depends on what I'm doing. This is my own little Frankenstein to come up with something that I want. But the point is that you want to try to keep the snapshot as focused as possible, right? Because I come across a lot of customers that just, now everybody uses it differently. If you can get a big snapshot to capture and you're customizing the reports, power to you, that's great, okay? But the way I've learned to use the product is really limit these snapshots is going to give you the most bang for the buck, in my opinion. So this particular one here, you could put user, XYZ would be that particular manager, and there you go. Or in my case, it would be Frank, my boss, and then I'd say okay, and it would give me that particular set of users that had manager of Frank. And then you wanted to know attributes, so in that particular use case, I don't know what the question was on the phone, but if you following along with that use case, the first one, real-world use case, it says it wants a report, access to AD, OID, NIS, right? So that's where the provisioning roles come in on that particular one, because you would want to make sure you included provisioning roles which granted users access to AD, OID, and NIS, and had the filter of user manager equal to that. Now that would give you a report of all users that had access to those endpoints, right? So you can manipulate business use cases by the use of snapshots. And I don't think people always understand that that's possible. And it really is. You can actually influence all of the out-of-the-box reports, not just in scale, but in business use cases, by creatively thinking, what kind of snapshot can I capture for this particular use case? So I hope that answered your question.
All right, so we're running out of time, but we can continue for a couple more minutes. We have one more question that I'll ask you in just a bit. But we'll post a thread to the community today, to the CA security community, for additional questions. So look for that thread later today, and you can post additional questions there, and I'll have Chris monitor that feed for those questions. All right, so thanks for joining today, everyone. We're going to put up a quick poll with feedback about what you thought of this webcast today, so look for that in the WebEx. But Chris, so one more question that I'll ask you for today. We have, who asked the question?
And thanks for all the questions, by the way. You guys keep me on my toes. I didn't bring my dancing shoes, though.
So Venkatesh wants to know, can you please let us know the filter, this is a two-part question. Can you please let us know the filtering option in audit reports in today's session or future sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the filtering, again, is another way to, it builds on this theory of I can accomplish use cases by manipulating the snapshot without actually customizing the report. Now, me personally, if I was on site doing reporting, I would want Crystal Reports Developer, just because I feel like I would need the ability to edit a report at some point in time. But if you don't have that, and even if I did, I would exhaust all of these avenues before I went to that customization. And you can really accomplish probably, I would say, 80 to 90% of the use cases just with the manipulation of the product. It becomes more challenging with auditing, though. And that's why I think on my auditing slide, I had put a link to custom reports here. Now, why do I put a link to it? I just, in my work with audit reports, I've kind of hit some areas where either additional reports could be produced or scale seems to grow so large over time with auditing, and I've had a number of fixes that came out. So let me see if I can, from current slides. Can you repeat that question again for me?
Yeah.
This,
All right, so can you please let us know the filtering option in audit reports?
yes.
And then the follow-up to that was how to capture events and sub-events through report server reports. For example, how to capture the events and sub-events of viewed, submitted, tasks in report server.
Right. Two good questions. They seem simple, but they have tough answers. So the first part of your audit, I'll try to get to the second part of your question, but my mind is, I gotta maybe just work on your first part first. These are two separate issues. You know that, Meg. It's like, all right, so the first issue, right? The first issue that we have here is the auditing, right? We have to filter. And this came about when I was working with a customer that had, I think, 2 million audit records, and it was blowing out their report server on a particular audit report. But the workarounds that I came up with from this issue are still applicable today because they will allow you to set up your audit XML to be more customized. So when you first enable auditing, it's like, okay, give me everything, right? And then if you run an audit details report is like, okay, give me everything. So basically both of them are just giving you everything, and it can become confusing. Obviously, you can put in a time frame on the audit details report to say, only give me this time frame, but it's still just a lot of information. Now, there's a number of different audit reports, right? But if you want to try to control what's in that audit report, you can do that through the XML itself by either toggling on or toggling off specific events. That'll show up in your audit database, and I believe that would address some of the questions that you're asking, if I'm not mistaken. But I can't really hear you, Venkatesh, but I know you have a line to me, so you can certainly call me on that. And the second part to your question is probably going to take us far beyond the time that we have allotted here, but I'll be happy to answer that for you, too. Why don't we follow up with that in a support issue or something, if you wouldn't mind, and I could include it in the next webcast.
Sounds good. All right, let me just make sure. I don't see any other questions, and we've definitely run out of time. So let's cut it off here for today and give Chris a breather, but we'll definitely be scheduling.
Or another cup of water.
Yeah. We're going to, like, get one of those camel backpacks of water for you next time.
That would be good. I use that when I'm mountain biking. It would be like Dune, the movie Dune. They drink their own sweat, man.
All right, so can you just pull the slideshow back up and just go to the last slide?
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Community
yeah,
side?
absolutely.
Yeah, no worries.
I apologize.
No worries.
Am I on the right one?
So we promised to be a little bit more structured last time, but I think part of the reason why we were a little all over the place today is because everyone had so many questions and seems to be so interested in this topic and has a lot of questions. So we'll definitely be scheduling another webcast next month. Like I said, keep an eye on the CA security community today. If you've never been to the CA security community, you don't need an account to view the content. Just go to ca.com/talksecurity. Other products covered in that community are CA Single Sign-On, Privileged Identity Manager, Secure Cloud, Data Protection, Risk Authentication, Strong Authentication, and CA Directory. So if you have any question about Identity Manager or Identity Governance, which we talked a little bit about today, or any of those other products, you can go to the security community and ask a question there. If your question wasn't answered today, we'd be happy to answer it there in the community. All right. Thanks for joining everyone today. It was a really great call, lots of activity, and thank you,
Chris. Bye, everyone.
You were
Bye,
awesome.
guys. Sorry if I was looking away a little bit. Sometimes I'm looking at these shows. Thanks for joining me in the room. Otherwise, I'd feel lonely. Next time, I want to hear more voices.
Yeah, we'll try to do more audio next time.
Well, take care, everyone. I really do appreciate you joining. Thank you very much, and great questions.
Thank you. All right, we're going to hang up the line now.